أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So thank you for your patience this morning, and who's got some successes or wins they'd like to share from yesterday? Please raise your hand in the bring action button, and we'll take a few minutes for that, and then we'll move forward. It's like I'm okay with the silence, you know.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Sister Kulita.
Alaikum assalam, believe.
I don't know about anybody else, but I think that these classes that we're taking in Halaqa is really helping me because I'm beginning to see the world is in such a turmoil, and we need the Quran to guide us, and we need Allah to bless us and to keep us strong. It's almost as if we're going back in time, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's disturbing to me, but then also it's awakening and enlightening me, knowing that we have Allah and that we are safe.
Beautiful. Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Beautiful awareness.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to share? Sharing is caring.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam, Ruby.
Alhamdulillah. A couple of days ago, I believe it was Thursday, where the discussion was about the Quran, uh, what the Quran is all about, what it teaches us, the wisdom, and how it is a cure, and the righteousness from unrighteousness. But it was a deep conversation. But what really struck me, brother, was when you asked the question, what does the mountains represent? And that had a profound personal effect on me because I went to Hajj, Allah blessed me to go to Hajj in 2000. And when you're there, you're surrounded by mountains. And I was mesmerized, hypnotized by the mountain, how powerful. And it just grasping. It had a hold on me that I couldn't understand. So anyway, when I got home and recuperated and was going about, I went to Alameda, how you could see these mountains, and the tears just start coming and coming. I don't know why I was crying. It was just overbearing. And if I was with someone in the car and we would go someplace and how far distant you see the mountains, the tears would come. So when someone asked me why was I crying, I couldn't say anything but the mountains. Well, that doesn't make sense, telling somebody you're crying because of the mountain. And I couldn't explain what I was feeling. But that lasted for a few months, about 4 or 5 months. It's not that way now, but it has gone. But the conversation, when it says what the mountains represent to me, I'm still searching for that because it had such a profound effect on me. And this was in the Quran about the mountains. So so that conversation tapped in that question me, what does the mountain represent? Why did it have such a profound effect on me that when I saw it, I would cry? tears.
Oh,
So I would just like to share that.
well, thank you for sharing that. And sometimes we don't know why things have an impact on us. You know, they just do, and there are probably other um, representations or metaphors of what a mountain could represent. But we were just looking at it within the context of that particular phrase, right? Because everything is within context. So thank you for sharing. Alhamdulillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Okay, let's see. So today we're focusing on we're still in the same ayah 21, but we're going to go to the next phrase. And these are again just some notes. Um, this section is kind of under this theme that the taqwa is what heals the human intellect. And the world we live in is an oppressive word environment. And all of us, we've been influenced by some type of limiting beliefs about ourselves, about others, about life. And those limiting beliefs really are false. We developed a lot of them when we were young. We were children, maybe between the ages of 4 and 8 years old, and we don't even remember when that happened. Conditioning by parents and siblings and friends and teachers and coaches and counselors, and you add on top the social and cultural influences, like what's in the music and in the movies and the media and the television programs and the politics and the news. And a lot of this stuff is just lies, 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 and lies. And people don't really seem to see the truth and the reality about their being. No one has really encouraged us to be ourselves. They mostly encouraged us to be how they wanted us to be. And so Allah has designed us a particular way. Each of us, each of you has a unique human design. And we want to learn how to be the design that Allah wants us to be. So instead of all those limitations, maybe it starts with understanding that Allah created us in excellence, in the best mode. He didn't create us for difficulty, right? The phrase, the crown of creation, and as human beings we are. And He's given us the best thing, which is an intellect, it's intelligence. Animals have instincts. Plant life moves on movement. I'm sorry, animals have instinct, they move on movement. Plant life has adaptation. Um, the minerals they are able to collect, like H2O, 2 parts of hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. And none of those have been given the intelligence that the human being has been given. But what happens is, we find ourselves in some type of inner conflict. It's like people, they want to make more money, but they believe money's hard to make, right? Or they want, better health, but they don't believe they can do what's required and sustain the action to make that. So it sets up inner conflict. They want better relationships, but maybe they believe relationships don't work out because of, whatever they experienced uh, in childhood or whatever experiences they've had throughout their life, right? People want more love and more happiness, more joy. But if they believe that, they don't deserve that or they're not worthy of that, then it's going to be hard to get because of the inner conflict. And so all have been infected by some type of ideas, um, unless they've been on a journey, been able to kind of become consciously aware of those things and make some shifts inside. This I'm not good enough, can't do it, all these kinds of things are the types of beliefs and thoughts that lead to some type of mental and emotional suffering. And that's why mental health is such a big issue these days, seems to me. It's everywhere, right? And it's needed, it's required. Yet there's a quality to the thinking that causes us to be in suffering. And the quality of that thinking is it's not true. The day is not the day for teaching all of this into depth, but it is a conclusion that we've come to in working with hundreds of people that, our thinking can be off. And we have a nervous system, a guidance, an emotional guidance system that tells us whenever we're getting upset about something or frustrated or angry or um, devaluing ourselves or whenever we're feeling any of that, that's the nervous system telling us that our thinking is off. Right? What we're thinking isn't true, and that's why we end up with those types of feelings. Right? And so those beliefs turn into thoughts and into feelings and into actions and into results that are limiting. And in science, in brain science, they call this a psycho-cybernetic loop. The loop of negativity. And a lot of that stuff is so far down under the surface, we're just not aware of it. It's kind of like you can put a song on loop and it just keeps playing and playing and playing. And we have songs in our heads and in our hearts that might be 30 years old, 40 years old, and something will trigger and that thing will come right up just like that. Because again, these things are lying down under the subconscious. So this idea of overwhelm and anxiety and worry and criticism, um, these things, again, they keep us from our true self. And there are people that are really tying their awareness into race and gender and age and all these other things, and they forget to be human. But the good news is that the consciousness, their type of consciousness is not our consciousness. Our consciousness is the taqwa, the God consciousness. Deep down in our souls, in our hearts, in our minds. Um, and this is where we want to put our attention, because whatever we put our attention on is what's going to show up in our lives. If we're looking for the beauty, we'll see it. And you all know the phrase, surely with every difficulty comes relief. With every difficulty comes the ease. And so the question becomes, what are we putting our focus on? Am I going to focus on the difficulty or am I going to focus on the ease? Because the ease is there with it. And we get to choose, but we got to be consciously aware, guarding our inner thoughts and beliefs and feelings in order to be able to make a choice. And so it's beautiful what you're saying, Khalida, this morning about just being consciously aware and knowing, hey, I have a choice. And the Quran is the solution for us. So we're still in Surah Al-Hashr, the 59th surah, the 21st ayat, if you want to pull it up. And I want to mention something that we experienced, man, around Imam W.D. Muhammad, rahimahullah alayhi, his work. He had, I call it a superpower. He could say one sentence or one phrase, and then one's life would turn and change just based on that one phrase. And, that happened to so many of us in so many different ways. For me, one of those fourth Sunday hookups. And I heard him say, learn to read the Quran for yourself. And however many hundreds of thousands of people were on there, in that moment, he was talking to me. And I've been trying to work on that since 1988. And this is no boast. We have to accept the blessings of God and humbly, God has taught us how to read and comprehend his words. And we're doing our best to teach others. And again, this is no boast. So what is in this particular أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. صدق الله العظيم. If we sent this Quran on a mountain, sent it down on a mountain, you would have seen the mountain split. And most of us readers of Yusuf Ali, I read Yusuf Ali for 14 years before we started this journey. And again, you see it there. Had we sent the Quran on a mountain, verily you would have seen it humble itself and cleave asunder for fear of God. Such are the similitudes which we propound to men that they may reflect. After looking these words up in the Arabic dictionary, we see that if we cause the Quran to descend from heaven and fall upon a mountain, you would have observed the mountain respond from a resting state to splitting within itself from a fear of Allah. So, we talked about metaphors. Well, Allah tells us this is a metaphor because He said, Tilkal amthalu. And it's not just one metaphor. A lot of times we can see, how something represents something or something is similar to something. It may be an allegory. But in the word, the pattern of the word is plural. There's more metaphors, and sometimes we'll think the metaphor we think of is the only one, is the only way to see it. Why did this happen? Well, it happened because of so and so. Yeah, but there might be other reasons, other possibilities. We stay open, right? So this metaphor is a story to get us to think. And what is it teaching us, right? And we asked, what does the mountain represent? We talked about that yesterday. When I look at some of the ayats, and they almost seem like a PowerPoint presentation to me, where there's an introduction and then there's a body, major points supporting the main point of it, and then there's some type of conclusion. And then in other ayat, it gives us a formula, right? It looks like this plus this plus this equals that. Or it gives us the outcome first and then tells us the steps afterwards. An example is in Surah Al-Asr, right? Yes, there's the loss, but then the exception. The exception would be like the outcome. And the exception is those who are faithful, plus they are producing the good deeds that are useful, plus they are mutually cooperating with others in truth and in patience. And that, I believe, is a formula for resilience. You want to come back from whatever's going on or in your life or whatever discomfort you have or whatever illness, surgery, whatever money problems, whatever. That formula in Surah Al-Asr, I have found in my experience to be a formula for resilience, to allow you to come back. And even for us, resilience is related to tawbah, I believe. Maybe I never said it that way before, but to become resilient, to bounce back, to come back, we got to come back to God, right? We got to turn our attention back to Allah, away from the loss and the fear that's rampant. It's all over the world. It's all over the place right now as we move into this new year. And the only time I want to mention Shaitan's name when I say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Other than that, I don't want to mention his name. Right? And I don't even want to watch what's going on in the news and what's going on in the politics. I don't want that energy. Focus attention on Allah. He's calling us to His mercy, and that's what we want. So the conclusion of this instructing sign, which we'll get to the conclusion next time, and just to remind us that tomorrow we'll be on the original Halaqa link that was sent out from Latifa, inshallah, and the Imam will be back with us tomorrow, inshallah. And just we want to remember so we be in the right place. I want to remember so I'll be in the right place. But the conclusion, the next phrase is that it's a narrative that Allah is expecting us to use our intelligence to modify our behavior. So if the mountain represents this intellect, and the mind wants to learn more and more so it can get precise knowledge and understanding to see clearly, and with clarity comes the courage and confidence to act in accordance with what's true. And I think we mentioned this, but it was narrated by the authority of Abi Jafar al-Baqir, radiallahu anhu, that God exalted is praised. He created the intellect. And then Allah ordered it to come forward, and it did. Then he ordered it to go back, and it did. Then Allah stated, I swear by my majesty and honor, and I have not created any creatures dearer to me than you, referring to the intellect, and would not perfect anyone's intellect unless I like him. I shall enjoin others to do good and admonish others against evil due to the intellect. Reward and punishment is given by the means of the intellect. So we see then the intellect is obedient. It's naturally obedient. What would make it be disobedient? Well, it would be some corruption in those thoughts, those beliefs, right? And when it's obedient, it's rewarded. And if it's not obedient, then it's inviting punishment. And we see, and I'm responsible for what comes out of my mouth. We all are. And certain things as we delve into the Quran shows us certain things. And one has to be respectful and confident in what they see. I may not see what other people see. It may show you something different than what it shows me. And as long as it's righteous and it's in line with the core values and the core principles, then it's all good. You know, there's room for intellectual effort. You know, this is such a vast writing and wisdom. There's room. We just want to stay in line with the principles of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. And so the intelligence, right? The soul has an intelligence, the heart has an intelligence, the mind, each have their own intelligence. Right? Like when it said that let a soul contemplate deeply about what it's sending forth for the morrow. Well, to contemplate deeply implies to me that there's an intelligence that the soul has. And when the intelligence comes in contact with the Quran, which again, its definitions, it defines itself as a guidance, as a mercy, as a clarity, as a criterion between what is righteous and unrighteous. It describes itself as a healing. So when the intelligence comes in contact with those things, then it's got to make a shift because the intelligence is obedient and has a deep respect for its creator. So we want to share a story, a historical example of this Quran splitting, of the intelligence splitting. And we all know the story of Umar and his character before al-Islam, excuse me. His character before al-Islam was he was a fighter. He was like the top wrestler. Nobody messed with Umar. But also was reported that before Islam, he was a drinker. He drank alcohol. And you know, the leaders of Mecca, they hated Islam, they hated Muhammad the Prophet because they thought it would change their social order. They had many of the same types of problems that we see in this modern society. There was slavery, there was economic elitism, there was male domination, et cetera, et cetera. And Umar hated Islam. He hated Muhammad the Prophet, praise and peace upon him. So one night, he got his weapon. He decided he was going to go out and kill Muhammad. So he's on the way, and somebody in the street stops him and says, "Well, before you go kill Muhammad, you better go check your own family because your son, your daughter, sorry, your sister and her husband, they have accepted Islam." So he storms over to the house and he knocks on the door, and there he hears them reading from the Quran. So he wants it. He's like, "Give me that," right? And his sister said, "No, you can't touch it." One of the renderings said that he hit the husband in some kind of way. Maybe his hand hit his sister, and there was some blood or whatever. Anyway, she told him, "No, you can't touch it because you're not clean. You got to go take a bath." And so he took the bath. He came back and he read something, and then he accepted Islam. So for many decades, maybe I just didn't ask the question properly, but it's like, what did he read that changed him, right? And again, it was this guidance coming within the context of all of that negativity and energy and hatred, right? And so if you turn to the 20th surah, Surah Taha, Taha, number 20, and we're going to take a look at the first 9 ayats. First 9 ayats. And again, feel free to use the chat if anything is resonating with you. Feel free to use the chat if questions come up. We'll check in shortly. So what did he read? Can we get along? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Taha. ما أنزلنا عليك القرآن لتشقى. Again, you're reading Yusuf Ali. These are what we came to in our expressions based on, as you know, we're reading these Arabic dictionaries. Somebody asked, well, why are we reading Arabic dictionaries? How do we know that that's what God said? Well, if you are looking up words in the language of the words, do you think it would give you more clarity than if you're looking up words from the language of another language, right? And so that's, yes. And you decide whether it's clear or it's not clear. But this is what we came up with as an expression, reflection. Never did we make the Quran descend from heaven and fall to the ground on you for your inconvenience, misfortune, and to change your condition. This rendering kind of makes sense to me in the sense that, if he was one of those and the leaders, they hated Islam because they thought it was going to change their social order. And God is saying, we didn't send this down to make this inconvenient or cause some misfortune to you, right? And I think that's part of the reason why, you know, the media and the politicians, the elites, talk about Islam the way they talk about it in this country. Because it really does have the power to free us from these social cultural ills. And the people that have what they think is power, they don't want to give that up. And so, they rather have the people stay in what's uncomfortable, what's easy, not have a correct perception of God, not even have a correct perception of themselves. So the Quran wasn't sent down for any kind of inconvenience, misfortune. إِلَّا تَذْكِرَةً لِمَنْ يَخْشَىٰ. It is only an awakening of the most perfect remembrance of Allah for whoever behave with a fear, yakhsha, it's a fear of respect and a consciousness from within themselves. There are different words for fear, right? God chose this particular word in this particular context. So Omar is reading this. Tanzila mimman khalaqa al-arda was-samawati al-ula. It brings down inspiration, revelation. It's inspiration that gives life from one who khalaqa al-arda, originated and created the earth for the first time without any preceding example. That's what khalaqa is, right? There are other words, right? Ja'ala, other words, but Allah is the one who khaliqu. In fact, we'll have this attribute as we get further down in these ayats in this particular space that we're in. Our intention, we're gonna go to number 24, 59, 24 eventually, and there are a number of different attributes of Allah that we'll get to explore. You know, in the first 13 years, and the prophet's mission, prayers and peace upon him, was teaching about La ilaha illallah, right? We got to get our perception of God straight. Not to say that we don't, right? You know, we were fortunate. Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah alayhi, he helped us get a correct perception of God. You know, all we had was what our parents had or what we were exposed to. And I was between birth and 13 years old. I was raised in an Episcopal church, and they had a sign on the outside of the church that Jesus is Lord. And just so happened yesterday, coming back from Juma, I was trying to go somewhere, but I didn't find where I was going. But I was on International coming back towards the masjid, and I saw this sign on the right. It said, Jesus Christ is Lord, right? And so, you know, that's what a lot of people think and are exposed to. And so this correct perception, right? He is the one who originated. There was no preceding example for the earth, and he created the high heavens for the first time without any preceding example. I mean, you know, that's something to really sit down and think about and reflect on. We don't know how he did it, how he does it, right? It's as easy for Allah to create all of the galaxies as it is for him to create a mosquito. Subhanallahi amma yushrikun. Glory to Allah, high above what they associate with him. So Omar's reading, Ar-Rahmanu alal arsh istawa, the most merciful benefactor, conferring benefits on everything. And he's upon the throne of truth and reality, establishing whatever he wills. I don't know if you can feel it. My body's tingling right now. Lahu ma fi samawati wa ma fil ardi wa ma bainahuma wa ma tahta thara. To him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth and whatever is between both of them and whatever geographical layers of the earth and what is in it. You know, the anthropologists, they go and they find all these things in the earth and the history and all these things. Well, all of it belongs to Allah. In the layers of the earth. There's science in all of these things here. وَإِن تَجْهَلْ وَإِن تَجْهَرْ بِالْقَوْلِ فَإِنَّهُ يَعْلَمُ السِّرَّ وَأَخْفَى. If you raise your voice aloud, so we talked about loud as the if of impossibility, right? Here's another word for if. It's in. But this is if, well, maybe if it happens or if it doesn't happen. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't happen. So if you raise your voice aloud, فَإِنَّهُ, then immediately, surely he is such that he knows and is aware of the unknown secrets and the mysteries. He knows. We might have, well, all of us may have some type of secrets, you know, only, and we know and Allah knows. And the blessing is that, you know, he hides those things for us. Sometimes even makes us forget. And if I'm remembering the story correct, there was a man who was coming to the prophet talking about some sin that he had been doing. I need to find it so I can say it properly. And what I remember at this moment, probably shouldn't even brought it up because I don't have it totally properly. So forgive me for that. Um, you know, basically, it's like don't say that. Don't broadcast your stuff. Don't talk about it, right? If Allah has covered it and hided it, then let it be covered and be hid. But we know for sure he knows, and he knows the mysteries. He's the one that knows why the mountains impacted you like that. I would say that's a mystery, right? I mean, it's not for us to know, right? But just to appreciate, be grateful for the experience, and we believe and understand that the tears are really a purification, right? It's a purification. I remember once we were making salat by myself. It was an Asa prayer. And you were reading, and you can read the Arabic Quran when you're making your salat. So we were reading it, and it came to a phrase that said something like, and I don't even know the number in verse, but it was something like the believers, and when they're reading, their eyes filled with fear, overcome with tears. When they're reading, their eyes overcome with tears because they understand what they're reading. And I don't know all of these words and all of these phrases in the Quran. Yet at that moment, I knew what it was saying, and I was just overcome with tears. I must have cried for like 5 minutes. I couldn't. I thought I wasn't even going to be able to finish the salat, and that's the power of this Quran. Right? So yeah, cry on, sisters. Cry on, brothers. Allah is purifying our souls and hearts and minds. Omar is reading. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa. Lahul asma'ul husna. Allah is. You may say, why you have these three dots? Because this is one of those things where there's a subject and no predicate. Allah is not giving us any information about himself in this scene. He's leaving it up to us. And this may be places where you'll see Yusuf Ali could have a parentheses where he's inserted some word, right? But what he's inserted doesn't, maybe not include all of the possibilities of words that could go in there, because there's no one word that's going to give you all of the information of what Allah is. So it's called an ellipsis. It's a subject without a predicate. Absolutely no God is illa huwa, except him. To him belongs the most beautiful, excellent names that's pointing to the majesty and the sublime. Omar is reading. And then the last, وَهَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ مُوسَى. Did the reports about Moses come to you? So Umar has this experience. And he was one of the few people in that time that could actually read and write. So he was somewhat intellectual, we could say. And the word Allah was known to the Arabs before al-Islam, because even Muhammad's father's name was Abdullah, a servant of Allah. But maybe they didn't have the correct perception. And so Umar, he understood it. He got a clear perception, the intelligence in his soul and in his heart and his mind accepted Islam right there on that moment. Because the healing, the guidance, the mercy, the criterion, it fell on his intellect and his mountains split. And he became one of the great leaders in Islamic history, right? And there's another example. The question is again, how does this apply to your life, to my life, to our life today? But there's another example of the intelligence splitting, because everywhere that the Quran goes, the intelligence splits and the people rise. It separates the thinking from the false beliefs and puts it in the thinking of what's true. And again, even stated by Khalila early on this morning. And then they're able to use that inner intelligence and live this taqwa life, right? It's a taqwa life and reach more of the potential and power that we've been given. But our experience is another example. Imam Muhammad Rahimahullah alayhi, he read the Quran to us, right? He read the knowledge, the wisdom, changed us. Our intellect changed. Our self-government changed, right? We got a correct perception. We got taqwa. We got moral consciousness. And the guidance gave us an alternative. And we gave up the vices, those comfort-seeking vices that, the alcohol, the drugs, right? We made different decisions. Our identity changed. We went from drinking and drugs to sober living, from prison to productivity, from wasting money and gambling to investing. We moved from fornication to an indecency to moral consciousness, right? Created moral environments to raise our children. This is a miracle, right? Closer relationships with our family, decisions to take care of ourselves better. Maybe started with how to eat to live, right? We got to, we just say if you had a river in front of your house and you bathed in it 5 times a day, would there be any dirt left? Right? Well, this is a picture, a metaphor of the salat, the connection with God and each other when we're together. We valued education. We opened up businesses. We became productive citizens, contributing to relieving some of these social ills and making bigger contributions in interfaith and government involvement and leaders in corporate America, right? And we learned to value our lives and to value our time and have a whole life. It totally changed and transformed. Major miracles, signs, evidence, proofs. And maybe we'll never see that big of a transformation in our society like that. Yet still, Islam is fastest growing in America and in the world. And this Quran and this association and the practices and the splitting of our intelligence has made us leaders in the world. First, being able to lead ourselves individually, leadership in the families, our communities, society, and the world. And this is no boast. Our Imam is coming back from an international trip, leaders in the world, right? So this gives us a blueprint for raising our awareness, for raising our lives, for elevating the human life. And we're so grateful to Allah for all of it. So this is what's been prepared for this morning. And kind of like the master chef, people in the kitchen and they cook up something and they bring it out, say, today I have prepared for you smoked salmon with blah, 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 blah. So anyway, let's see what,
Okay, no, I opened it. Okay, I'm taking my key out.
we need to mute that, Raheem. Need to mute yourself. Okay. Let's take any reflections, what shows up for you, what comes up. How might any of this might you make an application today? What's on your mind, on your heart? Try to check in the chat, see what we have here. Oh, I see Zakia has her hand up. Thanks for putting your hand up. Please, if you want to say something, put your hand up.
Assalamu alaikum, beautiful people.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Well, I'm trying to organize what I'm going to say first because this has been a really moving experience just these past 5 minutes, alhamdulillah. But the main thing I want to remind myself and others is that Allah is in control, and Allah created us, and we belong to Allah. So when Sister Ruby talked about the tears flowing, and you talked about the tears flowing, the tears belong to Allah, and we can't control these things sometimes, and that was just so moving to me what you just said about what the imam said, that one sentence that just changed our whole thing. That experience that you described happened to many of us, including myself, and I was only 18 years old, a child, but I thought I was grown, of course. but but it did happen exactly that way. And it reminded me of what you said about Surah Al-Asr.
Yeah, we gotta, seriously, y'all, we really need you to stay muted because,
Surah Al-Asr. I mean, Wal-Asr. You said that it's like this formula. It could be like a formula. And I see that often repeated. And I never looked at it that way as a formula. But I see it now, and I see it repeatedly happening over and over again. And it just makes me think that this is just one situation that humanity is experiencing, and that we've just been given the guidance, alhamdulillah, in the Quran, the light, if you will,
yes.
and to show us the way. But it's all repeated. It's like it's nothing new. Like people say, I'm going to stop there. Okay.
Yeah, well, and again, why is the repetition? Why is these things repeated over and over and over and over again? Well, repetition is the mother of learning. Repetition is how we assimilate and retain things, right?
Right.
And so, Allah knows that He created that, and He shows us that. And we can take that lesson and again apply it to our own lives, right?
Right. Right. Alhamdulillah.
That's beautiful. There are a couple of comments in the chat, and I wanted to. Um, I know that. Let's see. Someone, I think is Imam Abdul Malik, was mentioning that it was told years ago that the mountain represents government. Yeah, the mountain can represent government, right? The mountain can represent leadership. That's why I said, Tilkal amthalu. It is multiple metaphors that the mountain can represent, right? It's not just one, right? And in this particular context, I mean, it'd be a nice study to go and see, okay, where are all the places where this word mathala is, and see what are the different similarities that are mentioned in those different contexts. And that would give us like a word field for understanding the word methala, right? Rosalind's asking about the link for Sunday. I don't know if Latifah's here. Could you put it in the chat, please? It's the original link. When you signed up for the Halaqa, right? There was a link that was sent out. Well, that's the link we're going to be using for tomorrow. I hope that helps. Let's see. With every difficulty, there are two reliefs connected to it. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Where do you get those expressions of 21:9? Thank you, Talina, for that question. Those are expressions of what you're learning in the comprehension class. When we get down the road to the seventh stage of that journey, then you're going to be able to do that for yourself and pick your own words, right? From the Arabic dictionaries, and you want to keep them in line with the grammatical. Yes, that's exactly right. And we use Hans Wehr as a starting point for a surface definition of words, but there are other dictionaries that are richer, and we go into those dictionaries, and that's how we come up with those things. And I know it's a different kind of language for us, right? It's God's work. It's God's words. It's serious work, and we do our best to stay true to the grammatical functions and to the language. We always want to pick something that makes sense. It's got to uh, hold the grammatical functions, and it's also got to make sense. And Imam Muhammad rahimahullah, he was a master of that. He was a master of that. We'd be in these meetings and he'd be teaching you. People, teach, chief. Y'all remember that? Teach, chief, make it plain, all that. And our souls were elevated, right? But he's talking to us from a high place of knowledge and wisdom, right? We were here, he was there, he was teaching us, but there was a gap in between where we were and where he was talking from. And that gap is learning the grammar of the Quran. And the more we've been able to study, I can understand why he says certain things now, which I couldn't understand it when I was here and he was talking. Like a simple example, we saw when we were learning about the forms, form 8. It's in this, the word taqwa is in form 8. And I saw something, he said, taqwa speaks to us from within. And that was at the time that I was learning about form 8. Say, okay, now I understand why he says taqwa speaks to us from within, because it's in a form that's saying, just in the language itself, is saying that it's a consciousness from within. From within. And so this journey, right, of comprehension is critical for us. And you can do it. You can do it. You can do anything you put your mind to, right? All right. I'm seeing the chats. I'm not getting to all of them. I do see Tawhida's hand. We got 2 minutes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I want to share some of the things that resonated to me as you were going through this wonderful presentation. You started with the mental health, and comes from mental suffering, and our beliefs, our thoughts, our actions causing limited results. Then you talked about the universal wisdom is the teaching of the Quran, and we have the choice. Quran is the solution to our ills. And you also mentioned the formula that Zakia talked about. The goal for us is to be liked by Allah, you said, to develop our obedience, our intellect, to be rewarded. Inner intelligence is God consciousness. That was amazing. Alhamdulillah. And thank you for what you shared. Then the last thing was, how does the intelligence split? By separating truth from falsehood. And we're trying to develop that human design to elevate the human life. But it starts with ourselves first, inshallah. And thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Tawheed. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Allah is the teacher. He's teaching us. The link is in the chat for the Zoom for tomorrow. Ibrahim, thank you very much for putting that in. I know people have had trouble trying to copy it from within the chat, but if you click the link, and it'll come up in another URL, and then you can copy it from there and then have it. So we thank you all for your presence and your energy. Did I just hear someone wanted to say a last word? Okay. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day. Let's have a grateful day, right? And may Allah continue to love on us and have mercy on us. And we make this dua. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka anta samiul alim. Allah, our Rabb, accept this from us. Surely you are the hearer and the knower of all things. Ameen.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Salam.
Have a good day.
Salam.
Alaikum assalam.